In a world where technology has made us forget how to start a fire without a lighter or find food without a delivery app, medieval survival skills seem like something out of a fantasy novel. But don't be fooled. The men and women of the Middle Ages didn't just survive without Wi-Fi. They thrived in an environment where a cold could be a death sentence and a hungry wolf wasn't just a meme. These skills, honed over centuries of trial and error, weren't mere tricks to impress at a campfire. They were the difference between life and death. Today, in a world where a power outage can send us into a panic, some of these forgotten techniques remain surprisingly useful. Below, we'll explore 7 medieval survival skills that, while they might sound like something a manure-scented knight would practice, could get you out of a bind in the 21st century. Get ready for a journey to the past that, with a touch of humor and some practice, might just save your skin in the future. Let's start with the first skill, starting a fire without matches or lighters. In the Middle Ages, there were no convenience stores with colorful lighters. If you wanted warmth, cooked food, or protection from animals, you needed to master the art of fire. The most common technique was the friction method, specifically the fire bow. This involved using a hardwood stick, a bow with a loose string, and a softwood board. The idea was simple but required patience. Spin the stick rapidly against the board until friction created a spark.
Sounds easy, right?
Well, try it for 20 minutes in the rain while a crow glares at you with disdain. Medieval people were experts at choosing the right wood, willow or hazel for the board, and something harder like oak for the stick. They also used tinder, like dry grass or thistle fuzz, to catch the initial spark. Today, this skill is handy if you're stranded in a forest or just want to impress your friends at a campsite without looking like a total caveman. Plus, there's something deeply satisfying about creating fire from scratch, as if you're channeling a druid on a divine mission. Just don't burn down the forest by accident. The second skill on our list is hunting with traps and snares. In the Middle Ages, not everyone had a longbow or the aim of Robin Hood. Most peasants relied on clever traps to catch rabbits, birds, or even deer. One of the most popular was the snare trap, placed on a path frequented by animals. The rope, made from sinew or plant fibers, was tied to a bent sapling to create tension. When the animal stepped into the snare, the tree snapped back and caught it. Simple, yet effective. Another technique was the deadfall trap, where a heavy stone or log fell on the prey when triggered. These traps required knowing the animal's habits, where they ate, drank, or slept. Today, these skills are useful for hikers or survivors in wilderness settings, though we recommend checking local laws before hunting like a feudal lord. Plus, there's something almost comical about picturing a medieval peasant patiently waiting for a rabbit to fall into their trap while muttering about the weather or the turnip harvest. Moving on to the third skill, preserving food without refrigeration. In an era without fridges or freezers, medieval people had to get creative to keep food from turning into a biology experiment. Smoking was a star technique. They hung meat or fish over a low fire with oak or apple wood to add flavor and preserve it. Salting was another option, especially for pork, which was covered in layers of salt to dehydrate it and keep it edible for months. Pickling was also popular, with vegetables submerged in vinegar or brine. Can you imagine a medieval villager proudly offering you a pickled cucumber, as if it were their life's greatest achievement? These methods weren't just practical. They added flavor to a diet that, frankly, could be pretty bland. Today, these skills are perfect for those looking to reduce their reliance on electricity or experiment with ancient flavors.
Plus, if you ever find yourself in a zombie apocalypse, knowing how to smoke a fish could make you the hero of your survivor group.
The fourth skill is navigation without a compass or GPS. Medieval people didn't have Google Maps, yet they managed to travel hundreds of miles without getting lost, most of the time. They used the sun, stars, and natural landmarks. For example, they knew the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and that the shadow of a stick planted in the ground at noon pointed north in the northern hemisphere. At night, the North Star was their best friend, always fixed in the northern sky. They also observed the landscape. Moss grows thicker on the north side of trees in the northern hemisphere, and rivers often flow toward the sea. This skill required an intimate connection with nature, something we've lost in our screen obsession. Today, knowing how to navigate without technology can save you on a lost hike or simply make you feel like a medieval explorer, minus the risk of being accused of witchcraft for staring at the stars too long. The fifth skill is crafting basic tools from natural materials. Medieval people didn't run to the hardware store every time they needed something. They made tools from what was at hand. For example, they carved knives from flint or bone, using knapping techniques to shape the stone. Ropes were made by braiding nettle or flax fibers, a tedious but essential process for everything from traps to fishing nets. They also built shelters with branches, mud, and straw, creating surprisingly sturdy structures. Picture a medieval peasant, sweating under the sun, building a hut that would probably outlast some modern buildings. These skills are useful today for anyone wanting to be self-sufficient or just enjoy the challenge of creating something with their hands. Plus, there's an almost childlike joy in carving a stick until it becomes useful, even if your modern friends might think you've lost your mind. The sixth skill is knowledge of medicinal and edible plants. In the Middle Ages, there were no pharmacies or supermarkets, so villagers learned to identify plants that could heal or nourish. For instance, yarrow was used to stop bleeding, while cooked nettles were a rich source of nutrients. Dandelions, which we now consider weeds, were a delicacy and a liver tonic. But beware, picking the wrong plant could mean the difference between a hearty soup and a one-way trip to the afterlife. Medieval people learned this from their elders, observing and experimenting, sometimes with disastrous results. Today, this skill is invaluable for hikers, herbalists, or anyone wanting to reconnect with nature. Just don't go eating random berries. Even medieval folks knew that was a bad idea. Finally, the seventh skill is basic self-defense without modern weapons. In the Middle Ages, not everyone carried a sword, those were expensive, but everyone needed to know how to defend themselves. Peasants used everyday tools like staffs, pitchforks, or even stones as improvised weapons. Hand-to-hand combat was common, with techniques that leveraged the opponent's weight and momentum. They also learned to read their surroundings. A tree could be a shield, a river a barrier. Imagine a medieval farmer wielding a sickle with the confidence of a knight, ready to defend his turnip crop from any bandit. Today, these skills are useful for self-defense in unexpected situations, though we hope you never have to use a branch to fend someone off. Plus, practicing these techniques makes you appreciate how resourceful our ancestors were, even if their hygiene left much to be desired. These 7 skills, starting a fire, hunting with traps, preserving food, navigating, crafting tools, knowing plants, and self-defense, weren't just essential in the Middle Ages. They're still relevant today. They remind us that, before apps and supermarkets, humanity relied on ingenuity and a connection with nature. Practicing them is not only a way to honor our ancestors but also to prepare for a world where technology might not always save us. So the next time you're in the woods, out of signal and hungry, remember, a medieval peasant would probably laugh at your panic but would also teach you how to get by. And who knows, they might even offer you a pickled cucumber.